Victor Wembanyama recently got interviewed shortly after being drafted number 1 overall to the Spurs. One of the questions they asked him was what his all-time starting lineup to save the planet would be. Now his answer? Steph Curry, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tim Duncan, and Shaquille O'Neal. Now let's discuss this lineup and talk about why I completely agree with Wemby's take. To be clear, I don't think Curry is a greater player than Magic Johnson, but he fits better with this specific lineup. He's undoubtedly the greatest shooter of all time and has unmatched off-ball movement and is always a threat off screens. He won't be the main playmaker on the team or even the main ball handler, but he can still facilitate if needed to. And his best season that I choose is his 2016 season, where he led the league in many advanced stats and led the league in scoring and steals. Also, yes, Curry isn't great defensively, but neither was Magic, though neither are bad. Also, Curry is extremely efficient from everywhere on the court. Michael Jordan is arguably the greatest scorer of all time, while simultaneously having arguably the greatest defensive peak of any guard of all time. The season he was best individually would be 1988, which is the MJ I'm picking to represent this team. He won the scoring and steals title and averaged a ridiculous 1.6 blocks per game as a guard, placing him in the top 10 for blocks that season. He was also extremely efficient, averaging 35 points per game and 54% shooting. He led the league in pretty much every advanced stat you can think of. I don't need to explain much about this pick in detail much more. You guys know who Michael Jordan was. LeBron James is another player I don't really have to explain being here, but I'll do so anyway. He is arguably the greatest all-around player of all time, being one of the best scorers of all time, while also being able to play make at an all-time great level. The version of him that was best for this team would be 2013. That season he shot 56% from the field and was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, and he arguably should have won it over Marc Gasol. Again, he led in pretty much all of the important advanced stats. He's probably this team's main facilitator, which will work out because LeBron is not a selfish player at all. Tim Duncan was one of the greatest defensive players in history and was a perfect fit for this position. He anchored the Spurs defense for his 19 seasons with them, and they were always at the top of the league when it comes to defense. While yes, he might not be the best offensive power forward, but he was still great, being able to score in the post, and is still a huge threat overall offensively. Regardless, this team doesn't even need a great offensive player. They arguably have 4 of the greatest offensive players of all time already, which is why Duncan is a great fit for this team. With MJ and LeBron locking up the perimeter and Duncan anchoring the interior defense, this team will be virtually impossible to score on. Now, the version of Duncan that I'm picking is probably his 2003 season, where he was slightly worse on offense than previous seasons, but he averaged more blocks and had better defensive stats all around. And then the man in the middle, Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq in his prime might be the most dominant player this game has ever seen. While it's true this team doesn't need more offense, Shaq's offensive gravity will only make it easier for this team to score. You practically can't guard Shaq one-on-one, and if you decide to double team him, that's an easy bucket for whoever the open man is. In his 2000 season, Shaq, like the others, led the league in most advanced stats, and in his slow-paced era, averaged nearly 30 points and 15 rebounds. Absolutely insane stats. He wasn't bad defensively either, or even close to it. In fact, he was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting for the 2000 NBA season, which will obviously be the one we're going to use. On offense, this team has 4 of the greatest scorers of all time, which also includes one of the greatest playmakers of all time and the greatest shooter and off-ball mover of all time. The final player is still a huge threat to score in the post, being Tim Duncan. On defense, Curry is the only player that isn't great at an all-time level, and even then, he's not even that bad of a defender in the first place. This defense will be incredibly hard to exploit. That'll be it for this video. Make sure to like and sub if you did enjoy this video. Drop a comment if you disagree or want to share any other ideas. Thanks for all the support, guys.